Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor. Now I'm out driving our long-term Tesla Model Y standard range. We recently took a significant road trip in this Model Y. It was our first one. It was well over, I think probably all in, about 600 or 700 miles. And it was interesting. There was a good amount to talk about. We got some interesting efficiency numbers, which I'm going to head back to the desk and talk to you all about looking at Teslafy. But before that, let's cut to some of the footage that we took on our way back down when we had a bit of a range anxiety scare. We are here in Gaylord, Michigan, getting ready to resume our trip back down to southeastern Michigan. Supercharging up, just a little clipper stop. Now if we were to follow the car's navigation, it wants us to charge for another 15 minutes and then head out. That would get us down to our next supercharging stop. If we waited all the way time there, we're gonna be at 12% for our next stop. But using a better route planner, as well as just kind of knowing what our car's been able to do so far on this trip, I'm fairly confident if we turn down the heat a little bit and drive conservatively, we should be able to leave in just a few minutes here. Not only that, but it's only charging at 18 kilowatts because we're nearing up toward full. So rather than give it the whole 15, we're going to take off here shortly and possibly come in with just barely anything left in the battery into Bay City, but it'll make for an adventure. We'll see how it goes. Worst case scenario, we can always slow down as we're getting 10 minutes out or so and save up some energy that way. Okay, so we are about 10 miles from the supercharger at 6% charge. It is dicier than we planned on, and most of that is because we've had about a 15 mile per hour headwind this entire time. Wind doesn't typically come from the south here, but kind of a weird weather pattern, probably everything that's been hitting Texas continuing up this way. So any speed we're doing is pretty much increased by 10 to 15 miles per hour in terms of wind resistance. So yeah, it's been interesting. Alyssa's not too thrilled, but we're gonna make it. We're just gonna come in really darn close. So we will report back, hopefully at a supercharger and not on the side of the road. Another reason I know the wind is the main culprit is this car is rated to do about 270 watt-hours per mile at 65 miles per hour. We've been averaging 61 and still doing 292 watt-hours per mile. So not great, and that's very much, you got the cold, doesn't help, 28 degrees Fahrenheit, but we've got the heat off. Still, just fighting that wind, we're doing much less efficient than, especially even just the trip up here. On the trip up here, we were much more efficient than the car expected we would be, and this one we've been much less efficient than the car expected. So wind resistance, something to consider when road tripping your EV. Right, 0.7 miles away from our exit. We're so close. The percent remaining when we arrive keeps oscillating between 1 and 0. And it turns into a really ominous red when it goes to 0. But we are at 1% battery, still on the highway. I took it off cruise control a little bit earlier, and the throttle feels so dead. You have to push it so hard just to get any response from it. But we're going to come off right now and get as much juice back in the battery as possible as we slow down.
I'm worried that when we slow down and come to stop at a stop sign, it won't get back up.
Well, it should. We'll find out, but it should.
Right.
Can't miss any turns, that's for sure.
Right. The windows are fogging up so much.
taking it nice and easy. It really requires a lot to get going up there, but just babying it. The good news now is we're off the highway, so if anything happens, we can just get out and push. Yep. There's some business around here would have a wah plug we could at least just plug the car into and get enough juice to make it down the street within 5 minutes or so. 0.9 miles, 1%, should be good. We've got all the electronics off.
Oh my gosh, please don't turn into a red. Good. You can tell how fogged up our windows are because we have the heat off. Looks like we're gonna make it. This is just ridiculous.
Oh, we went to 0. 0% charge in the Tesla.
Oh my god.
So it says we should take a right turn, taking around to the Meyer to the Chargers.
No wrong turns, please.
I'm wondering if we can just pull in.
Because this is a red light and I don't think we're gonna get to stop.
Alright, I see the Chargers. We'll just go through the lot right here.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Coming in at 0%.
This is ridiculous, guys.
That's what makes life interesting.
I wouldn't even brake to go in reverse. Just honestly go sideways next to them.
It's okay. We got power.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
Oh, wow, there's actually a car using an Electrify America plug. A Bolt. Alright, we got the pick of the litter. Go down here.
Oh man, we made it. I can't believe that. 0% and we made it. Oh my god. No, this won't even be clickbait.
Yeah. We keep it real. Battery too low. Charge immediately to ensure vehicle will start, remain responsive, and to avoid potential battery repair.
Oh god.
There we are, starting to charge. Made it. Heard the clicks. Let the power flow.
Time remaining. Oh my god.
Look at that. Jumping up, already up to 100 kilowatts. That'll probably pick up all the way up to about 20 or 30% charge. It'll keep increasing. So, we're gonna go stretch our legs a little bit, find a bathroom, and maybe something, a little something to eat or something, salad. So, obviously, that situation could have been avoided had I just stayed at the supercharger for a few more minutes in Gaylord. But the frustrating thing was, when we were at that supercharger, we were charging at a really slow rate. Over that whole 20-minute period, we never got over 18 kilowatts out of the supercharger. Now, part of that is the battery didn't have very long to precondition. The outside temperature was well below freezing, but that was frustrating just sitting there watching the battery barely creep up. I mean, we're talking a percentage of charge almost every 2 minutes. Now, the other thing to say is there is some degree of battery reserve. I've seen people say they've gone as far as 15 miles on 0%, but that was obviously not an ideal situation. We had people in the car. They were nervous. It was cold. It would have been disastrous had we pooped out on the highway. So you definitely have to be careful and account for extra conditions when you're doing these type of road trips. Going forward for the rest of our trips, we'll plan on getting to chargers with at least 10% battery so that there's wiggle room for conditions like this. Now, aside from that drama that admittedly could have been avoided had we just stayed at that first supercharger just a few minutes longer, how was the rest of the trip? Well, it was actually pretty darn smooth. You shouldn't buy a standard range Tesla, whether it be a Model Y or a Model 3, with the intention of doing a lot of road trips, especially in colder weather. The high speeds, especially over 70 miles per hour, coupled with cold weather running the heater and just being harder on the battery chemistry, really nicks the range. That being said, if you want to take road trips in the standard range car, even the Model Y, it's certainly doable. You just have to be okay with stopping about every hour and a half on average. So if we take a look at our trip here, using Teslafy, this is the application that we use that shows us all sorts of information about our car, shows us everywhere the car's been, total efficiency over the whole time we've had it, how much electricity we've used, average speed, all sorts of super geeky stats like that. Now, a few high-level stats from the travel portions of our trip, not the drives around our destination. Average speed was 63 miles per hour. Average miles per kilowatt, about 322. Average watt hours per mile is about 322 or 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour. Now, keep in mind, our car does read a little high on the speedometer, so that's actually probably closer to 325 watt hours per mile, but because this is just sort of a general overview and those numbers are pretty close, we're just going to go with the exact numbers the car reads out. So that 322 watt hours per mile figure is about 88% of the EPA highway estimated MPGE, if you will. So how efficient the EPA says our car should be. And with these efficiency numbers, we'd probably be looking at about 160 miles maximum on a full charge, assuming we've got a 53 kilowatt hour battery. It was just under 300 miles one way for each trip, going up and going down. In total, we made 5 stops, 3 charging stops up and 2 going back down. We had 3 adults in the car, along with a little bit of luggage. On the trip up, we supercharged for 16 minutes, 55 minutes, and 5 minutes. This 55-minute charge, we actually stopped and got some dinner, so we didn't need to charge that long, but we chose to. And then drove pretty quickly on the way up. On the way back down, you saw in that video at the beginning, we had one 20-minute charge at the beginning, and then the 48-minute charge from 0 at the end. Average temperature for the trip was 27 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is big. That really ate into our range, both with the battery chemistry and running the heat pump. Now, when we look at our second supercharger stop, this was actually the fastest we've ever charged. We peaked at 140 kilowatts. It's a 150 kilowatt supercharger. But that only went to getting a state of charge of about 10. And right after 10% charge, the charging rate drops off dramatically. You can see once we're at 30% charge, we're down to 100 kilowatts, and it keeps going down from there. So that by the time we're at 50% charge, we're only charging at 70 kilowatts. 75% charge, 35 kilowatts, and kept going down, but still stayed above 20 kilowatts all the way up to 88%, whereas that first supercharger we were at, that one we didn't even get over 20 kilowatts. That one was definitely frustrating. So not only does the cold weather hamper your range, but it also slows down how quickly you can charge. And yes, preconditioning the battery can definitely help, but keep in mind, preconditioning the battery also uses up more battery because it's got to heat the pack up. So over 9 hours of driving and over 2 hours of charging to do that, definitely not as quick of a road tripper as taking a longer range car or taking a gas car. As a quick comparison, if we use a better route planner here to do some estimating, if we wanted to head from our house up to our location, Harbor Springs, 275 miles, and it would require 39 minutes of charging, 4 hours and 52 minutes total with our car. Now, if we were to swap that out for a long range all-wheel drive Model Y, what would the difference be? 4 hours and 27 minutes and just a single charging stop about halfway through for 20 minutes. 21 minutes of charging, make it up there still with 5%. How about if we swapped that for standard range Model 3? Could that do it in one stop? Nope, you'd still have to stop twice, really not too different from the Model Y. 4 hours and 44 minutes. So It's interesting when Elon Musk says that the standard range Model Y was pulled because its range numbers weren't great enough, but they still sell the standard range Model 3, and for a trip like this, you're really not looking at that big of a difference. I mean, yeah, it is quicker. You don't have to charge for quite as long, but do still have to make 2 quick stops. So if they could sell one, you'd think they could sell the other. And just for kicks and giggles, let's see if you had a long-range Model S. Do it, whoops. 2020 Long Range Plus, how easily you could make this whole trip in one shot. Oh wow, even the Long Range Plus, it's saying you'd have to have a quick 7-minute supercharger stop in Gaylord. 4 hours and 10 minutes though. So a few last observations from me and Alyssa on how this trip went. When you're road tripping in the cold and you need to extend your range, be prepared to be cold in the cabin. We had our jackets on and hats and gloves because when we were coming down there and we needed to stretch our range and make it to that last supercharger, we had all the heated seats, everything off. Another thing to consider is every time you get off the highway to go find one of those chargers, that's about an extra 5 minutes or so. It's not always as simple as just pulling off and hitting a gas station that's often right next to a highway off-ramp. Sometimes you gotta drive a mile or 2 off the highway just to get to the charger. Then you have to find it in the parking lot and get there. Some superchargers are right close to a big mecca of food locations and bathrooms and a bunch of convenient places. But like the supercharger we hit in Lansing, there really wasn't too much around. We had to walk way across a large parking lot just to get to a cafe, which fortunately was fairly empty and willing to give us some coffee and let us use the bathroom and everything. But it was pretty desolate aside from that. And on top of that, when it's cold outside, you don't always want to walk very far. It's one thing if it's a beautiful sunny day and you can stretch your legs and get some fresh air, but if it's below freezing and you just want to get home, it's stressful to have to stop and just waste time, essentially. So it keeps coming back to what I've said about owning an EV over multiple videos, especially a shorter range one like this standard range Model Y. You have to be willing to make a change in your driving lifestyle. You have to be intentional with trip planning, and you have to be willing to accept alterations to your plans in order to accommodate your vehicle. And for some people, like myself, yeah, I don't mind. I think it's kind of fun. I think it's a challenge. But for other people, like Alyssa, who's not a big fan of road trips to begin with, she'd rather just get there and get it done with. So a car like this, great for around town driving for her, but not the ideal one single car for someone who doesn't want to live that kind of lifestyle. Now, we are taking a trip down to North Carolina here soon, so that's going to be a super long trip, well over 1,000 miles. That's going to be a real... Now this week, we're actually taking a road trip down to Asheville, North Carolina, and around that neck of the woods, so it'll be almost 1,500 miles of driving. We're doing it all in the standard range Model Y, and that'll be the final test of road tripping with this car. It'll be warmer outside, be a lot of different weather conditions, multiple stops. So be sure to stay tuned for that more extensive road trip video and let me know what you would like to see in that. What kind of stats you want to see, what sort of information is valuable, do you have any other sort of questions about road tripping in a shorter range electric vehicle like this? It's definitely a neat car, but like I said, you have to be willing to make some concessions. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want to see more on the standard range Model Y, check the links in the description. We've got a whole playlist, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.